My name is Emma, and if you had told me 5 years ago that I would be the black sheep of an upper-class family, I would have laughed. But here I am, married to the love of my life, Daniel, yet constantly battling the disapproval of my mother-in-law, Victoria. When Daniel and I first met, it was like stepping into a fairy tale. He was charming, kind, and utterly oblivious to the privileges his upper-class upbringing had afforded him. I, on the other hand, came from a middle-class family where every penny counted. Our backgrounds were worlds apart, but our love felt like the perfect bridge. Daniel's family was another story. They were welcoming at first, in a distant, polite kind of way. But Victoria, his mother, always had a measuring look in her eyes. She was the matriarch, a woman who carried her family's legacy like a crown and expected everyone to live up to her standards. I tried, God knows I tried. I attended every event, smiled through countless dinners, and even laughed at jokes I didn't understand. But it was never enough for Victoria. She saw me as an outsider, someone not fit to carry the family name. And the more I tried to prove myself, the wider the gap between us grew. The first real clash came with our wedding. Victoria wanted a spectacle, something that would make the social pages and impress their circle. She talked about 7-figure budgets, as if discussing the weather. But Daniel and I, we wanted something different. We wanted a celebration of love, not wealth. We organized a modest wedding, focusing on what mattered to us: good food, close friends, and family. It was a beautiful day, the kind you dream about, but Victoria couldn't hide her disdain. She complained about every detail, from the decorations to the menu, and even managed to convince some relatives that our wedding was a disappointment. Looking back, I realized that was the moment I lost any chance of winning her over. Not that I didn't try. I continued to play the part of the dutiful daughter-in-law, but Victoria's coldness turned into something more. It became a silent war, one where every gesture and word was scrutinized and judged. I remember once overhearing her talking to a friend, describing our wedding as charmingly simplistic, but lacking in any real taste. Her words stung, and I realized then that it wasn't just about class or money. It was about control. Victoria wanted to dictate every aspect of our lives, and my refusal to bend to her will was seen as a direct challenge. Daniel saw it too. He stood by me, always, which only worsened his relationship with his mother. It was as if she couldn't comprehend why her son would choose his wife over her archaic ideals of family and status. But I was tired. Tired of the constant judgment, the veiled insults, and the never-ending battle to prove myself worthy of a family that seemed determined to see me as an outsider. I started to withdraw, to build walls around myself for protection. And as the holiday season approached, I made a decision that would set the stage for an even greater conflict. One that would test not just my marriage, but my very sense of self. The stage was set for a showdown, and I, Emma, was at the heart of it. Little did I know, the coming events would reveal secrets and challenges that would change everything I thought I knew about family, love, and belonging. The battle lines were drawn unintentionally with our wedding, a day that was supposed to symbolize unity, but instead sowed deep-seated division. Daniel and I had envisioned a day filled with love and laughter, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for us. We wanted it to be a celebration of us as a couple, a reflection of our journey together. Victoria, however, had other plans. She envisioned a grand affair, something that would be talked about in their social circles for years to come. Her idea of a wedding was less about the union of two hearts and more about showcasing wealth and status. When we told her we were planning a modest event, focusing on the quality of food and intimacy of the gathering, her disappointment was palpable. "You only get married once, Emma," she said in a tone that dripped with condescension. "Don't you want it to be memorable?" It was memorable, but not in the way Victoria had hoped. Our wedding was a joyous occasion, filled with laughter, diverse cuisines that reflected our love for food, and heartfelt speeches. Even George, Daniel's father, who was known for his stoicism, let loose and enjoyed himself. But Victoria, clad in an expensive designer dress that overshadowed even the most elaborate decorations, wore a tight smile that never reached her eyes. The fallout from our wedding was immediate. Victoria's disappointment turned into a silent yet relentless campaign against me. She would make offhand comments about how things could have been better If only we had listened to her. I heard whispers, little snippets of conversations where she lamented to family members and friends about the missed opportunity our wedding was. Daniel tried to mediate, but there was a growing chasm between him and his mother. Each time he defended our choices, it only seemed to fuel Victoria's disapproval. He was torn, caught between the love for his mother and his loyalty to me. But the real conflict was not about the wedding. It was about control. Victoria had always been the one calling the shots in the family, and our wedding was the first time someone had dared to defy her. It was more than just a disagreement over a celebration. It was a challenge to the power dynamics within the family. I found myself questioning my place in this family. I had married into a world where appearances mattered more than authenticity, where tradition overshadowed individuality, and at the center of it all was Victoria, a matriarch who viewed my presence as a threat to the order she had meticulously maintained. As the months passed, the strain began to take its toll. Daniel and I were happy together, but the constant undercurrent of tension with Victoria cast a shadow over our marriage. It wasn't just about being accepted, it was about maintaining my identity in the face of overwhelming pressure to conform. The holiday season was approaching, a time for family and togetherness. But in my heart, I knew that being around Victoria would only deepen the divide. It was time to make a choice, one that would either bridge the gap or widen it irreparably. Little did I know that this decision would lead to a confrontation that would change everything. The holiday season, meant to be a time of joy and family, became a battleground in my ongoing war with Victoria. After the wedding fiasco, I realized that any hope of a peaceful relationship with her was wishful thinking. It was then that I decided to set firm boundaries, a decision that Daniel supported, albeit with a heavy heart. Victoria's influence in the family was undeniable. She was used to getting her way, and anyone who dared to defy her faced her wrath. However, I was determined not to let her control our lives. So, when the annual family vacation planning began, I made a stand. I think it would be best for everyone if I didn't join this year, I told Daniel, who looked at me with a mixture of understanding and sadness. He knew how toxic the atmosphere had become, but the thought of being apart during the holidays was painful for him. Victoria's reaction to my decision was as expected. She took it as a personal affront, a deliberate act of defiance. Her demeanor towards me, already frosty, turned openly hostile. She accused me of driving a wedge in the family, of turning her son against her. The backlash was immediate and intense. Victoria's influence meant that other family members started to view me with suspicion and distrust. Whispered conversations would cease when I entered a room, and invitations to family events became less frequent. Despite the challenges, Daniel stood by me, his loyalty unwavering. This only seemed to infuriate Victoria more, and she began to question my intentions, suggesting that I was manipulating her son for my gain. Her accusations were baseless, but they hurt. I had entered this family with open arms, only to be met with closed doors. Our relationship reached a breaking point during a particularly tense family dinner. Victoria, in a moment of unbridled anger, openly criticized our marriage. Her words were sharp, each one a dagger aimed at my heart. "You've changed him," she hissed across the table. "My son was never like this before you came along. You've taken him away from us." Daniel, usually the peacemaker, finally snapped. "I'm still your son, but I'm also Emma's husband. She's my family too, and you need to respect that." The room fell silent. It was the first time Daniel had openly confronted his mother. The tension was palpable, a tangible entity that filled the space between us. That night, as Daniel and I lay in bed, a mix of emotions swirling within us, we realized that our struggle was more than just a series of disagreements. It was a fight for our identity as a couple, a battle against an oppressive tradition that sought to dictate our lives. As Christmas approached, the idea of spending it under Victoria's scrutinizing gaze was unbearable. I suggested to Daniel that he should go on the family vacation without me. I would stay back, find solace in the quiet of our home, and later join my own family for their post-Christmas celebration. Reluctantly, Daniel agreed, but his decision only fueled Victoria's narrative that I was the villain in this story. Her call the next day was a clear indication of her feelings. "You're tearing this family apart," she accused, her voice dripping with venom. "You've taken my son, and now you won't even let him spend Christmas with his own family." I listened, a sense of weariness washing over me. Her words, once sharp and hurtful, now seemed hollow. I was tired of the constant battle, tired of trying to prove myself to someone who had already made up her mind about me. As I hung up the phone, I realized that this was more than just a family feud. It was a test of my resilience, a challenge to my place in a world that seemed determined to reject me. But as the year drew to a close, I knew that the biggest battle was yet to come. The decision to spend Christmas apart from Daniel's family was one of the hardest I had ever made. As the festive season enveloped the city in its warm embrace, I found myself enveloped in a cold, unyielding solitude. Daniel, torn between his loyalty to me and his family obligations, was a picture of inner conflict. In the end, he chose to stay with me, a decision that only served to deepen Victoria's resentment. Christmas Eve arrived with a sense of emptiness. Daniel tried to keep a brave face, but I could see the sadness in his eyes. He missed his family, traditions they shared, and the laughter that echoed through their grand home. I felt a pang of guilt for being the cause of his sorrow, but I also knew that joining Victoria and the rest of the family would only lead to more pain. The day passed in a blur of artificial cheerfulness. We watched movies, cooked together, and tried to make the best of our situation. But the shadow of the unspoken conflict with Victoria loomed over us, an ever-present specter of discord. On Christmas morning, the phone rang, shattering the fragile peace we had managed to build. It was Victoria, her voice icy and sharp. "You've really done it this time, Emma," she accused. "You've kept my son from his family on Christmas. Are you happy now?" Her words were like a slap in the face, but I had grown accustomed to her hostility. "Daniel made his own decision," I replied calmly, trying to keep my voice steady. The conversation that followed was a bitter exchange of accusations and grievances. Victoria blamed me for every rift in the family, for every moment of unhappiness Daniel had ever experienced. I listened, feeling a mix of anger and despair. After the call, Daniel and I sat in silence, the joy of the day overshadowed by the heavy weight of family conflict. It was clear that something had to change, but I was at a loss as to how to bridge the chasm that had formed between us and Victoria. The days that followed were a reflection of our inner turmoil. Daniel was distant, lost in his thoughts, and I was consumed by a sense of helplessness. The family vacation that I had opted out of became a symbol of my isolation, a stark reminder of the price of setting boundaries. As New Year's Eve approached, I made a decision. I would reach out to Victoria, try to mend fences, and start the new year on a new footing. It was a resolution born out of desperation, a last-ditch effort to salvage what was left of our family ties. But fate had other plans. A call came late on New Year's Eve, a call that would change everything. Victoria had been rushed to the hospital, a heart attack. In that moment, all our differences, all our conflicts, seemed trivial and inconsequential. Daniel and I rushed to the hospital, the urgency of the situation bringing a new perspective. As I sat in the sterile waiting room, watching Daniel pace back and forth, I realized how deeply entwined our lives had become with his family. For better or worse, Victoria's health scare was a wake-up call, a stark reminder of the fragility of life. It forced us to reevaluate our priorities, to question the value of holding on to grudges and resentments. As Victoria recovered, there was a palpable shift in our dynamics. The brush with mortality had softened her, made her more reflective, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of hope, a possibility of reconciliation. But the journey to healing was far from over. The years of conflict had left deep scars, and it would take more than a health scare to erase them. As I looked ahead to the coming year, I knew that the road to forgiveness and understanding would be long and arduous. But for the sake of our family, for the sake of the love that Daniel and I shared, it was a road I was willing to travel. Victoria's health scare marked a turning point in our strained relationship. As she lay in the hospital, frail and vulnerable, I saw a different side of her, a side that was human, scared, and far from the controlling matriarch I had always known. It was a stark reminder that beneath the layers of pride and prejudice, we were all fragile beings, bound by the same fears and hopes. In the days following her hospitalization, There was an unspoken truce between us. The usual sharp remarks and cold stares were replaced by a cautious civility. Victoria, recovering slowly, seemed to have lost some of her combative spirit. Daniel, relieved by his mother's improving health, hoped this would be a new beginning for us all. But old wounds don't heal easily. The years of resentment and misunderstanding had built walls that were not easy to tear down. I found myself wrestling with mixed emotions, relief that Victoria was recovering, but also apprehension about what this meant for our future interactions. One afternoon, while visiting Victoria in the hospital, I found myself alone with her in the room. The silence was awkward, filled with unspoken words and unresolved tensions. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice softer than I had ever heard it. "Emma, I know we've had our differences," she began hesitantly. "I haven't always been fair to you. This situation has made me realize that life is too short for such bitterness." Her admission took me by surprise. It was the closest thing to an apology I had ever received from her. I sat there, unsure of how to respond. Part of me wanted to embrace this opportunity for peace, to let go of the past and move forward. But another part, the part that had been hurt and belittled, clamored for retribution, for recognition of the pain she had caused. I looked at Victoria, her usual armor of confidence and control gone, replaced by a certain vulnerability. It was a moment of decision. Should I seek revenge for all the hurt or extend the olive branch of reconciliation? My mind raced with possibilities. I could use this opportunity to assert my place in the family, to turn the tables on Victoria and make her feel the isolation and judgment she had inflicted on me. But as I watched her, a frail figure amidst the sterile hospital sheets, I realized that such a path would only perpetuate the cycle of conflict and pain. I appreciate your words, Victoria," I finally said, my voice steady but gentle. "I hope we can put the past behind us and start anew." A flicker of relief passed through Victoria's eyes. "I would like that," she replied quietly. The days that followed were a tentative dance of reconciliation. We started to build bridges, slowly and carefully. There were moments of awkwardness, of old habits threatening to resurface, but there was also a newfound respect and understanding. Daniel was cautiously optimistic, happy to see the two most important women in his life trying to mend their relationship. And for me, it was a journey of letting go, of choosing peace over revenge, understanding over conflict. But the true test of our fragile truce came during the next family gathering. It was an opportunity to solidify our newfound understanding or to fall back into the old patterns of hostility and resentment. As the day approached, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation, wondering if the peace we had started to build was strong enough to withstand the pressures of family dynamics. What happened that day would either cement our journey towards healing or shatter the delicate peace we had managed to forge. The family gathering loomed like a final exam for which I had been preparing, yet still felt unready. The event, a grandiose annual soirée hosted by Victoria and George, was typically a showcase of status and superficial pleasantries. This year, however, it carried a new significance. It would be the first public appearance of our reconciled family unit. As Daniel and I arrived, I felt a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The opulent setting, a grand ballroom adorned with crystal chandeliers and silk drapes, seemed to echo with the memories of past confrontations. Guests mingled, glasses clinked, and the air was filled with the light hum of orchestrated socializing. Victoria, resplendent in a tasteful evening gown, greeted us at the entrance. Her smile, once a well-practiced facade, now held a hint of genuine warmth. The initial exchange was cautious but polite, a significant improvement from our previous encounters. The evening progressed with an unexpected ease. Conversations flowed more freely, and I found myself engaging with family members who had previously kept their distance. The atmosphere, although still charged with the undercurrents of a complex history, was noticeably less tense. Daniel, watching his family interact with a newfound harmony, seemed visibly relieved. His gaze met mine across the room, and in his eyes I saw gratitude and love. It was a silent acknowledgement of the journey we had undertaken, the challenges we had faced and overcome together. However, the true test came later in the evening. Victoria, in a move that surprised everyone, raised her glass for a toast. The room fell silent, all eyes turning towards her. Tonight, I want to acknowledge someone who has shown great strength and grace, she began, her voice steady. Emma, my daughter-in-law, has been a part of this family for years, and I have not always been as welcoming as I should have been. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Victoria continued, her eyes meeting mine. Emma, you have brought much-needed change to this family. You have shown us that love and understanding are more important than tradition and appearances. I am grateful for the lessons you have taught me, and I look forward to the future we will build together as a family. The room erupted in applause, a sound that resonated with the beating of my heart. It was a moment of redemption, of wounds beginning to heal. I felt a wave of emotion wash over me, a mix of relief, happiness, and a newfound respect for Victoria. The rest of the evening was a celebration not just of the family's social status, but of its growth and unity. Laughter filled the air, replacing the stifling formality that had once dominated these events. As the night drew to a close, Daniel and I walked hand in hand, the stars shining brightly above us. The journey had been long and fraught with obstacles, but we had emerged stronger, both as individuals and as a couple. Our story was not just one of conflict and struggle, but of understanding and forgiveness. It was a testament to the power of love and resilience, a reminder that sometimes new beginnings can emerge from the bitter ends. The days following the family gathering were filled with a sense of quiet contentment, a stark contrast to the tumultuous years that had preceded. Daniel and I, once caught in the eye of a relentless storm, now found ourselves in a peaceful harbor. The change was not just in our relationship with Victoria, but within ourselves. As I reflected on the journey, I realized how much I had grown. The struggles with Victoria, though painful, had taught me the value of patience, resilience, and most importantly, the strength of my own convictions. I had learned to navigate the delicate balance between standing up for myself and extending grace to others. Daniel and I, through the fires of conflict, had forged a deeper bond. Our marriage, once tested by external pressures, was now a testament to our mutual respect and understanding. He had been my unwavering support, my partner in every sense, and together we had turned adversity into a stronger, more profound love. Victoria, too, had transformed. The formidable matriarch, once unyielding in her ways, had shown a capacity for change that I never thought possible. Her journey, from a figure of authority to one of understanding, was a powerful reminder that people could evolve, given time and empathy. Our family dynamic had shifted. The once rigid hierarchy dissolved into a more egalitarian structure, where each member's voice was heard and respected. The change was not overnight, nor was it without its setbacks, but it was a start, a foundation upon which we could build a more harmonious future. As the seasons changed, so did our lives. Daniel and I, once isolated in our struggles, now found ourselves part of a family that, while still imperfect, was learning to embrace its flaws and grow together. We hosted dinners, attended family events, and engaged in conversations that previously would have been unthinkable. The scars of the past remained, a reminder of the challenges we had faced, but they also served as a testament to our resilience. We had navigated the complexities of family dynamics, cultural differences, and personal battles to create a space where love and understanding could flourish. As I looked forward to the road ahead, I saw not a path free of obstacles, but one that we could navigate together as a family. The journey of reconciliation and growth would continue, with its highs and lows, but I was confident in our ability to face whatever came our way. Our story, woven through the threads of family drama and personal struggles, was a tapestry of life's complexities and beauties. It was a narrative of change, forgiveness, and the enduring power of love. In the end, what mattered was not the conflicts we had faced, but the lessons we had learned and the bonds we had strengthened. Our story was a reminder that even in the most challenging circumstances, there is always a possibility for new beginnings, for healing, and for hope.